Well, hello, everybody. This is Fadi. Welcome back to a continuation of our fascinating video series on biblical prophecies and how they are relevant when it comes to Middle Eastern geopolitical events. Today, we are going to talk about Yahya Sinwar, the last leader, at least last public leader for Hamas, who was recently basically assassinated, if you wish, or died through the efforts of the Israeli military. And we want to see how that ties into Isaiah 14. And with us here, of course, to unpack all of that is our dear brother, Joel Richardson. Joel, welcome back, brother.
It's good to be back, Al-Fadi.
Yeah. So how is the death of Yahya Sinwar, or maybe just Yahya Sinwar in general, ties into Isaiah 14?
Yeah, so in talking about biblical prophecy, and you referenced it at the end of last session, I always say prophecy is pattern. Biblical prophecy is pattern. So first of all, in order to properly interpret biblical prophecy, you have to know the basic story that the Bible is telling. The Bible is telling a story. It's a grand narrative. It's a story of redemption. You could say it's a story of paradise lost, paradise restored. It's a story, it's actually a story that's told through the lens of the Exodus itself, that in the same way that Israel came up out of Egypt and entered into the promised land, in the last days as a nation, they will sort of go through a final, ultimate or second Exodus, if you will, once again, and they'll enter the land once again, except this time they'll enter under the leadership, literally, of their king Yeshua, their King Jesus, and he will lead them back into the land as the greater Moses. Okay, so when we understand the overarching biblical story, the overarching biblical narrative, the promised plan of God, you could even say the gospel, the good news. In my opinion, the gospel is told throughout the entire Bible. It's not just in the New Testament. The whole Bible tells a story of redemption. Okay, so once we know the story, then we start zeroing in on certain features or elements or components of the story. So let's just say we zero in on, at the end of the story, we know that the Messiah, Jesus, kills the bad guy. He kills the Antichrist. The Antichrist is Satan's sort of sock puppet, his human sock puppet through which he's going to try to carry out his desires and his goals in the earth. Okay, so we know that that's a key feature. It's a key theme of the story. So when I say prophecy is pattern, what I mean is throughout Israel's history, when they have a great victory over one of their enemies, oftentimes the Bible will look to that as a glimpse, as a pattern, as a foreshadow, a prophetic picture of the ultimate final destruction of Israel's enemies. So as a good example of this, you have the story of Deborah and Barak. Deborah, this is during the time of the judges, before the kings, before King David, and Deborah was judging Israel at the time, and her and Barak, they went to war against Sisera. Sisera was the commander of the pagans that lived in the land at the time. Israel was in the land. They called it the land of Canaan. And usually we call it the land of Canaan. And Sisera was the commander of the armies of Baal. And, the Israelite armies of Yahweh, they went to war against the armies of Baal. And as the story goes, Sisera was exhausted. There was a big storm, by the way, that helped Israel win the victory, which is important because they used to say that Baal was the storm god and that he rides on the clouds. And then you have Moses going, no, only Yahweh rides on the clouds. And Yahweh is the only one who actually controls the weather and this type of thing. Like, your God is just a pathetic demon. He doesn't control the weather. So it's interesting that it was a weather event that led to Yahweh's victory. It's a point that a lot of people miss. But anyway, Sisera ends up in the tent of this woman named Jael, and Jael feeds him a bunch of yogurt and curds, makes him full. He takes a nap, and as he's asleep, she takes a tent peg, a big spike, and she hammers it through his temple and kills him, literally nails his head to the ground.
Right.
Okay, so you go, wow, that's a brutal story. Yeah, that's a tough gal. Well, interestingly enough, later in Zechariah, who's one of the last of the prophets, he actually makes reference to this story. And he says this in Zechariah chapter 10, verse 3. He says, "The Lord of hosts has visited his flock, the house of Judah." Okay, so students of the Bible know that the Messiah would come from the tribe of Judah, from the house of Judah. And he says, Zechariah says, "And he will make them like his majestic war horse or his majestic horse in battle." We go, wow, the Lord's really going to use Judah. And then he says, "From them will come the cornerstone." We all go, okay, that's Jesus, the chief cornerstone. And then it says, "From them will come the tent peg." You go, oh, okay, so Jesus is called the tent peg. He is the one who's going to crush the head of the Antichrist. He's going to crush the head of Satan, if you will, okay? So the Bible looks at this historical defeat of one of Israel's historical enemies, CIRA, and it sees that as a picture of the last days defeat of the Antichrist. Okay, so with that said, we look at the death of Yahya Sinwar. For the past year, he's the leader of Hamas. He's caused all of this trouble. And we go, okay, he's not the Antichrist, okay? However, we can see in his death, we can see with his death, we can see a picture of, a prophetic glimpse of the future death of the Antichrist. And one of the main passages that speaks of that, actually, I'd say probably the most significant chapter in the Bible that speaks of it, is Isaiah 14. And I want to look at Isaiah 14 because it's fascinating. It's a prophecy that starts out talking about the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. He was one of Israel's other enemies, historical enemies. And then as it's prophesying against Nebuchadnezzar, it just seems to shift and bleed into and start speaking of Satan himself. You go, well, wait a minute. Is this talking about a human on the earth or Satan? And then it shifts and bleeds. It just flows into naturally speaking about the Antichrist. And this is the nature of Hebrew biblical prophecy. You see, they're all basically the same. Yes, they're different. You know, they're different entities. Nebuchadnezzar is not the Antichrist. They're different humans. But they're all basically the same in that they are the satanic vessels. They're the human vessels of Satan. Okay, so Isaiah 14, it starts out talking about when the Lord has had compassion on Jacob and he's again returned Israel back to their land and this type of thing. So after Israel's restoration, it says, then at that time, they will take up this taunt. In verse 3, it says, "It will be in that day when the Lord gives you rest from your pain, your turmoil, and the harsh service from when you were enslaved." It says that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon. Okay, so after the king of Babylon is defeated, this is what they will say. "Oh, how the oppressor has ceased, how fury has ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked." You know, he's broken the rulership, the leadership, the scepter of rulers, which was formerly used to strike the peoples, which subdued the nations. And it says the whole earth is at rest. Everyone's breaking forth in shouts of joy. They're excited that this bad guy is finally dead, right? Now look at this. It says hell from beneath is excited to receive you. It's like Sheol is excited to receive the Antichrist. It arouses for you the spirits of the dead. Okay, so the picture is all of these kings and former rulers of the earth. They're down there in hell and they get up off of their thrones and they rise to greet the coming of the Antichrist. It says, they will all respond and say to you, "Even you have been made weak as we." You know, you who are formerly great, now you're just like one of us. Your pomp and the music of your harps has been brought down to Sheol. Maggots are spread out as your bed. You know, instead of having a royal burial, your bed is maggots. Worms are your covering and blankets. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. Now, this is very important now, Fadi. This is the verse that the King James interprets wrongly as, "O Lucifer,"
Right.
okay, Lucifer, son of the morning. This is the verse that a lot of people believe Satan's name is Lucifer. But what it's saying is, "Oh, you star of the morning, son of the dawn." in the Hebrew, this is Helal ben Sechar. Okay, it's very similar to the Arabic, which is Helal, which is the crescent moon, the Helal that's on the top of every mosque.
Right.
And I do find it interesting that the very verse in the Bible that speaks of Satan is actually the same word for the crescent moon that's on the top of every mosque throughout the earth. It's just an interesting point. But then it says this, ready? It's talking about Satan. He says, how you have fallen from heaven, you son of the morning. You have been cut down. You who have weakened the nations. And then it says, you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. Like, I will be great. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. And then the scriptures say, no, you'll actually be thrust down to hell, to the recesses of the pit. And everyone who see you, they will gaze at you and they'll say, is this the man that made the whole earth shake, who shook kingdoms? And then it says this, who turned the whole land into a desert, who destroyed its cities, ready? Who did not allow the prisoners to go home. When I look at that picture of the death of Yahya Sinwar, laying there in the pit, covered with rubble, this guy who terrified, who brought a whole nation to war, who would not let the prisoners go home. And then it says this, it says, all of the kings lie in splendor, like they have all of these great burials, but you are thrown out without a nice grave, like a worthless branch covered by the slain with the sword. You are dumped into a rocky pit like a trampled corpse. You will not join all of these other kings in burial because you destroyed your own land and you killed your own people. And so, yes, Yahya Sinwar is not the Antichrist, but he is a type. He is a picture of the Antichrist. And I cannot look at his death without seeing, sort of heaven winking at us through Isaiah 14 and saying, this was a picture of the coming future defeat of the ultimate bad guy, the ultimate Antichrist.
Thank you, brother. What's next on the agenda for our next episode?
I'm not really sure yet, but we'll just continue to talk about biblical prophecy and things that are being fulfilled.
Very good. Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone. Until next episode, everyone, have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And ring the bell so you will be notified when we release new content. Our mission is to reach Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and help Christians engage with their Muslim neighbors. If you want to join us in this life-changing work, please support us on patreon.com/CIRA International, or just click on the link below.